Hey, okay, here's another exciting tutorial for teachers. And specifically in this one, we're going to be talking about storytelling. And one of the questions that teachers have is about how to tell stories, especially personalized stories. They also have trouble with which resources they want to use. So in this presentation, I intend to show you how to use storytelling in the class in a nutshell. So everything you need to know about storytelling, I'll be telling you right now. So let's get started here with a little summary about what we're going to see. We're going to study a little bit about the technique itself, and which means that storytelling is a methodology that, using the principles of rhetoric and narration, proposes highly influential stories. Then we're going to talk a little bit about TPRS, total physical response with storytelling, or you could say teaching proficiency through reading and storytelling. And the first level here, Shock English and White 1. And then furthermore, we're going to be talking about what is a personalized story. What are the golden principles to teach those personalized stories? And then I divided the like in the different sections here. Step 1, choosing the vocabulary, 2, principles for using that vocabulary, and then some extra tools that you use for teaching vocabulary. Then we're going to be talking about building that vocabulary, building the story, the questions and answers, question and answer games, and what we should do after we have the students already prepared for extra activities that we can do with those stories, and what you have to do with the stories that you created and whatnot. So let's just move on here. So as I said before, the technique concerning TPRS, concerning storytelling itself, means that storytelling is a methodology that, using the principles of rhetoric and narration, proposes highly influential stories. This is a definition by Mario Moreta, 2014, a book called The Psychology of Total Physical Response. And then he introduces it, saying that storytelling is not only used into language instructions, but it's also used in business and some other areas. And storytelling is basically that in a nutshell. So we don't really want to focus on the on theoretical, on all the theory here. We want to focus on the practical. So let's just go into the way that we teach a mini story in class. So you have taught, maybe I just got here a random gathering of lessons. I mixed in lessons 1, 2, and 3 just to show that right after the third lesson, you can already create a personalized story with the students that is going to help them build up their confidence and use the vocabulary in the practical way, and that's highly meaningful for the students. And so let's just go ahead and take a look at the words that I chose. I chose the words run, open, book, middle, walk, and to, classroom, the, at, scared, bored, boy, thrill, point, and is. The words scared and is are in red because they are not words that are in the list. You have not taught those words, but I found that those words were necessary for establishing a reason in the middle of the story why the boy throws the book at the board. So I needed that word, and it's not that big a deal if you include that word in the story, and because it's a very visual word, it's easy to TPR it, as we say. So it shouldn't be hard to include it in the story. Students would get it. And then the word is, you actually teach the word is in a subtle way. You'd say point to the board that's in the classroom, that is in the classroom, or what is this? Point to this. Points to this object. What is it? And so you see, you use the word is in a very implicit way. You say, oh, this is good. So you use it. It's just that as a teacher, you have to think that you're teaching the words, and those words need to be very clear for you on how you're going to help the students understand them. So, well, here's the story. And this story right here is not something that you're going to see in the material, at least not for the time being. Right now, we're working into building up mini stories like these to make them available for the teachers. But really what we wanted to do is to create your own, is to think outside the box and to think on your feet about stories and facts and interesting things that are cool. And they are like, you have that personality, the teacher personality that's really important too. So, well, it says a boy walks into the classroom. He runs to the middle of the classroom. He points to the board and opens it. He is scared. He throws the book at the board. All right. So, that's just a simple story. You're going to look at it. You're going to like, what's hard in that? That can be hard. I mean, you could just sit down and then say, just tell the whole story, and the students would get it. But that's not the point, because for you it's simple. For you, it's not complicated at all. But for the students, it's a whole different matter. It's really hard for them to speak that correctly, to be confident enough to believe that they can learn that story, that they can answer questions about it, that they can do it. So it's really, we're going to be talking about some principles here, but don't take the simplicity of the story as something that's going to be simple for the students, because it might be, it might not. And we're going to have bright students that are going to get it in the first place. They have studied English before. They have some English background. And they are going to be like easy. It's going to be easy for them. And you have other students that are going to have a lot of trouble with it, because they find it a hard time to learn English. They've had teachers in the past that did not show that they were capable of learning. So you might have a lot of different issues, especially with Brazilian students. I see that a whole lot. People that are like traumatized. And so you really have to be careful with that. So what is a personalized story? That, what I just showed you, is a mini story. And what I did is I used previously taught vocabulary. And that's important here, because the vocabulary that I'm using in the stories is the vocabulary that I have already taught in lessons 1, 2, and 3. So it's really like just reinforcing that vocabulary. It doesn't mean that you have to always use previously taught vocabulary. What I mean is that vocabulary has always to be previously taught. If you understand what I mean. Vocabulary is just the first step. All right. So then through that vocabulary, now the goal of the teacher is to help the students make up meaningful sentences. And what I mean by meaningful sentences is that it's not just some gibberish or just some repetition that's just tiring, and then you just ask them to repeat sentences that they don't get, that doesn't make any sense for them. But you're going to make up that meaning. You're going to show, you're going to make it visual, you're going to act it out, you're going to role play it. So it's going to be meaningful for the students, because they need to express themselves to then tell the story. And that's why it is a meaningful sentence, right? That's the concept of meaningful in that sense. So then the goal of this, of building up these meaningful sentences, is towards fluency, students' fluency. You want them to be able to listen to you and comprehend what you're saying. What I mean by fluency is that they can learn the story, and then they can comprehend questions that are asked about it easily, and they can perhaps tell the story in a nice, good pace, which doesn't always happen, but students are able to comprehend a whole lot and it builds up that confidence, which leads up to fluency. So that's the big deal. Well, the idea is that you use students' ideas and students' choices to make up the story. And here's where many teachers will struggle, because not always they have that ability to deal with that. I mean, making up stories and dealing with student interruption while you're teaching the story. We are very traditional teachers in some sense, and so we often want the students to listen to us and then just reproduce what we had planned. And what personalized stories do is they just take you from that, they just take off your ground, and students knock your socks off with crazy, bizarre facts, and they completely change your story. And now it's up to you to just stand on your feet and continue the story and go with the students, and not let yourself be tricked or trapped by traditional way of teaching of me. I'm the responsible for building the story. You're responsible for listening to me and reproducing it exactly the way I'm doing it. But, in a personalized story, it's different. Well, what are some golden principles to teaching a personalized story? First, you have to keep it simple. Don't make it too complicated. 8 to 10 sentences max, like that the students can, retain, and then they can take and reproduce in some way. They're not going to be able to, say or speak the whole 8 sentences that you're going to use perfectly. But the more you keep it simple and the more you keep it contextualized, that means it is about something that they have already studied, and thus they have some confidence regarding it so far. So you should make it visual. There's no way of building up a mini story if you don't make it visual. Therefore, you have to use your body language. You have to be enthusiastic. You cannot just show yourself, okay, guys, let's like build up a mini story right now. It's like you have to be confident and you have to be enthusiastic. So this is party time. This is like happy time. It's just happy hour. We're going to have fun here making a crazy story. And the principle is, I didn't write this down here, but the big principle is, if you don't surprise me, I will surprise you. That means you ask your students to always surprise you with bizarre details that are completely out of the ordinary. And so whenever they do that, you try to make it even bigger, because like they're going to try to surprise you, but then you're going to surprise them even more. And they're going to go crazy at the fact that you did something completely out of, like, come on, that's just not possible. And so that's basically it in a nutshell. And then you have to think as a student. It's still on making visual. You have to bring props. There's no way of, building up a mini story if you don't have props. It's really like necessary for this. For example, for this story that I created here, that we're gonna do in a few minutes, I only needed a book basically, but I might also want to use a spider, or because I could. Well, you're gonna understand why I could use a spider, but I could bring in a spider or things that scare, like a mouse, not a real spider, like a toy spider, and a toy mouse or something I can use to scare somebody. So that will be very useful in that sense. And think as a student means that, again, you are always thinking, it's an easy story, but then I really have to think about what are my students going to say, or what are my students going to think when I start shooting words at them, shooting knowledge, and they're going to go like, I don't understand anything you're saying. And you thought that I could do this, but I actually am not ready for it. And you have those students who miss classes and they come into class, and how can you help them out? So you have to think as a student always, and always be teaching that weakest of the weakest student, because if he gets it, then you're pretty sure that like 100% of the class got it, because you actually achieved good results with that weak student. Well, let's then look at some steps to build that story, okay? This is what I want to do here. I want to help you in understanding how exactly my mind works, how a storytelling teacher mind works, and building that up and starting from the very beginning. That's like principles. What are the principles for choosing vocabulary, and how do I pick it, and how out of 75 words I chose just those, and I could have chosen some other words, but I chose those. You could have chosen any of the other words. It's up to you if you want to focus on other words. The key here is not that you were teaching vocabulary so hard, is that you're helping them, build up sentences, again, meaningful sentences, so they can come out of classroom confident of having been able to at least, speak up a whole sentence of like 10 words in a sentence. So yeah, that's what you want to help them out with, and not just memorizing, but actually being able to understand it and say it out with their own words. So yeah. Okay. So there's over 25 words in each lesson. And so you have to choose vocabulary carefully, because you're not going to include all 75 words, for example, from lessons 1, 2, and 3. And you have to focus on those troublesome words that students don't know. They seem to have trouble with it. I mean, not that you have to focus on all the troublesome words, but it'd be good if you include those troublesome words in the story. I realize that my students have trouble with the word throw, especially in terms of pronunciation. And they listen to it and they keep trying to say it, and they say throw, and they can't do it. And so by exposing them to lots of, meaningful context and comprehensible input with the word throw, I'm going to help them with that grasping of the pronunciation and of the word itself. So it's important to doodle with the words. Get one word and another one and put them together and see what it comes out. See how funny they are together. If they're funny together, then use it. It's kind of like interesting. Like if you say, instead of saying stand up, his mother says stand down, which means like stop or be quiet. So playing, stand down would be funny because you're like doodling with the words and you're mixing them up and they're like funny. If you say like touch the light, it's kind of funny because they can't touch it unless they are really, really tall. But I have never had a student that can actually touch the light, even though he was really tall. So yeah, anyway, so step 2 are principles for using that vocabulary. Again, you have to make a visual. TPR is the primary tool, which means you are going to really make it a priority that you start teaching that word, the vocabulary item, with TPR. It means you start giving commands to students with those words. Students have already learned those words, so you don't have to worry about a whole lot. It's going to be easy, but you have to be careful. Anyway, introduce new important words for meaning. For example, scared. It's a new important word. And if you need to introduce those new important words, it's all right, unless you don't like fill up the story with words that the students have never seen. But like 1 and 2 or like max 3 words, it's fine. It doesn't have, there's no problem. Well, some extra tools on teaching vocabulary. You can read Todd McKay's approach concerning teaching vocabulary. This is done in the training, but you also get that article from your coordinator, and you can get it from your coordinator, and he's going to give you that article on Todd McKay's approach to teaching vocabulary. Furthermore, you have some Genki games that you can totally teach. If you are teaching at XOK English, you just get in touch with a Genki teacher, a teacher for kids in your school, and he's going to show you the books that contain the games and where on the website you can find vocabulary games. Also, there's the middle book of games that you can teach using those cool games. Miro is partnered with Genki, so yeah, there's some games that he developed, and it's kind of like that. I don't exactly know, but it's from Genki. So that's it, guys, about principles for using vocabulary. Let's go into the practical. We're just working on the theoretical now. Let's go into the nitty gritty here. So, building vocabulary. Think about it this way. I have the story. A boy walks into the classroom. He runs to the middle of the classroom. All right. So for every piece of my story, I think of how I'm going to build students' confidence and build students' ability to understand that story whenever I tell it to them. So here I have a boy. Okay, a boy. That means one boy. It's not two boys. It's just a boy. And you don't know who is the boy. So I say a boy, right? A boy. So is this, I show the picture of a boy and I say, is this a boy or a girl? And the students are going to say, of course, it's a boy. And then are there one or two boys? Okay, just to make sure that they get the idea that A means one. There's one boy. Okay, a boy, one boy. That, that's why I asked that question. Then next, okay, I could do a whole lot more. I'm just giving you a few hints of what I'm doing. This is not everything I do. This is just a few sentences that I try to gather here that are important points, and that it helps you think of the way I think when I think of teaching vocabulary to a student and teaching a mini story and then helping him out, empowering the students with a vocabulary and the comprehension that they're going to need in order to understand that story later on. Okay, that's about it. That's my idea. Okay, then you have walks into the classroom. Then I say, point to the student who walks into the classroom. I ask a boy to walk into the classroom. I say, point to the student who walks into the classroom. Walk quickly into the classroom. When I walk into the classroom, everybody clap. If I walk into the classroom 1, you scream, "No, Junior, your classroom is number 2. That means I take everybody to the hall, and then I walk into classroom number 2, and then when I walk into classroom number 2, the students scream, "No, Junior, your classroom is number 2. Walk into classroom number 2. So, it's, building that context. The school environment is just free. You can use it. You can take the students out of the classroom. You can just feel free to take them anywhere. So walk into the reception and sit on a chair, walk into the teacher's room. Okay. Student A walks into the teacher's room. Student B walks into the reception. So then you keep, repetition goes on and on and on and on, but in different contexts, in different ways. And okay. So now that you got this, let me just read it through here. He runs to the board and then run back to the desk. Walk quickly to me, but don't run. Run around the desk. When I run to the desk, you run to the board, to the middle. Point to the middle of the table. Walk quickly to the middle of the room. Put the marker in the middle of the classroom. Okay, here you see that I focused on to the middle. And right here in the end, I focused that. You can also say it's different because I say put the marker in the middle of the classroom. It's different. Because really there you have to go, you are in the middle of the classroom. So now you're going to put it in the middle of the classroom. So you understand that the person is not in the middle of the classroom. Point to the middle, and then the person is not in the middle of the classroom. And then walk quickly means that he's still going to get there. But here he's already in the middle. So he says, put the marker in the middle of the classroom because the person is already there. So just to get that idea, you see, the students are going to start understanding things implicitly. Like you don't have to, one of the things that let me tell you a little bit about of the classroom, then I will go back to what I was going to say. Here is, he runs to the middle of the classroom. So now here we have the word of, which I also did not include in those red words, but because it goes like view, it goes really implicitly, and there's no way of avoiding that word, and it's you just had to teach it here. But I decided to not only clarify on of the classroom, but I decided to clarify on of, right? Because here it goes. I said, point to the middle of the table, touch the middle of the desk, and then I said, point to the chair of the teacher, which gives that idea, of belonging. Of means it belongs to something. So of the table, the middle belongs to the table. It's the middle of the table. I mean, not belongs exactly, but you get that idea that, the middle is part of the table, therefore they can't be separate. So the chair of the teacher, point to the door of the classroom. So they get that idea of. But then again, going back to what I was going to say, it's not like you're teaching them this and you explicitly say, okay, guys, now we're going to prepare you for understanding the story, and the parts of the story that says to the middle, or the part of the story that says of the classroom. No, you are going to give these commands as if you're just playing around with them. If you're just, having fun, you're just, taking your time, as if you're just playing around, if you're just having fun with the students. And so when you say point to the middle of the table, touch the middle of the desk, point to the chair of the teacher, all these things will be done, and you don't have you don't have to tell the students that you are doing this. You are teaching them these structures and the way that, using their vocabulary. You don't have to teach any of this. All you have to do is just have fun and show them. But you know that in your mind, you are teaching those things. You're teaching, preposition, to the, of the, you're teaching these things, but the students don't have to know any of that. And that's the beauty in teaching with storytelling, with teaching with such approach. It's because you don't have to explicitly say what you're doing before you do it. And after the students have acquired language, after language acquisition has taken place, then you can clarify on of the, to the, and then send them some grammar exercises on that. But up until now, it's just that empirical, that, experiencing the language the way it is, right? And nothing but that. Just that's it, right? Then continue here. He points to the book and opens it. Then I focus here on it. Touch the board and open it. Take the marker to the table and put it on the table. Point to the book, walk to it, touch it, pick it up, put it on the chair, sit down on it. He's scared. Then I use a gesture here. Mouth opens as hands are slightly closed in front of it in scared motion. Like you have that scared hand in front of the mouth and your mouth open. Like you're scared. And that's a gesture that I use for my students, so for them to understand that word scared. So when I say you were scared, and they go, right? And so there's walk slowly to Mark and scare him. Sorry, I made a mistake here. The D there, just take it out. Walk slower to Mary and scare him. To Mark and scare him. Throw the spider at the boy and scare him, right? I also made two mistakes here. I don't know what's going on. Let me just correct this here real quick. Right, here it is. So walk slowly to Mark and scare him. Throw the spider at the boy and scare him. So here is where I could use a spider that a student could draw, or if you have a toy spider in your school, you could totally do it. So here, he throws the book at the board. It is important to focus here on the preposition at. So throw the paper at the teacher. Then you could review, throw the paper into the bag. So it doesn't stick to that. Oh, always throw at. And now they get throw at a person, throw into something, throw the book into the bag, throw the paper ball into the basket. So throwing at is more like in an aggressive way, throwing it at someone, throwing it at something, and just bam, throwing it. So I found here that I could teach these things. So you always have to keep, this is gonna be somewhat interesting to teach and focus on while I am giving the commands, and bear that in mind. So that's it. He throws the book at the board because he's scared. All right. So here we go with a mix of the lessons. That's what we did. Here's the story, and we're just reviewing it. But now it's time to build up the story, right? This is the story that we're going to build. A boy walks into the classroom. And we're going to go here. We're going to move along because there's going to be some time in a point that I created a situation here that's very similar to what happens in class. And therefore, I'm going to help you out with solving that problem. It's going to show up right here. So first principle in building the story with the students after they learn the vocabulary words and you practice is to maintain the pace. I mean, you know what you're doing already. You know the story. And now, therefore, you're just going to go into class and you're going to start building the story up with the students and maintain that pace. Not too fast. Don't speak too quickly, and maintain that language level that it's related to the student's level. And you build short sentences. Don't build long sentences. As you can see, the sentences are very short. A boy walks into the classroom. He runs to the middle of the classroom. He points to the book and opens it. He's scared. He throws the book at the board. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sentences. And that's a mini story, okay? Who says it's not a mini story? It is a mini story. It could be shorter than that. The boy could say, a boy walks into the classroom. He opens a book. He is scared. That's it, right? It could be that, just that simple. The boy walks into the classroom. He picks up the book. He opens the book. He's scared. That's a story. That's a fact. You just told something, right? It could be just that simple. So again, make it simple. And then the student's response is something that I consider really important. This was created, basically, I got this from Blaine Ray, and he does this thing of, or wow, awesome, great, super. So you assign different students to say these things. So let's say today Mark is going to say awesome all the time. Whenever something exciting happens in the story, he says awesome. Whenever something exciting happens, Luke is going to say great, and Priscilla is going to say super. So, it's just assigning with different words. Of course, they have to understand that these are words that express positive feelings, positive things. So just assign them. It's really interesting because whenever you say something in the story, they understand they are going to immediately respond with that kind of funny response. Ah, or wow, ah. It's like they're going to respond with those, and you're going to ask them. Just make sure that you ask them to respond in that way, so that you know that they are understanding what you're saying. Comprehension is taking place. All right. So here we're going to go into the very practical part of the lesson itself. It is one of the hardest parts for students, for teachers and students, and teachers have a lot of trouble with it sometimes. Most of the time, I would say, but I really want you to pay attention here so that you understand how it goes. Okay, here's the example. I'm going to go about here showing you how it goes. I show a picture of a boy and a picture of a girl, and then I ask the students, in this story that we're going to make up, is there a boy or a girl? And then the students say, a girl. And though I just go pick up the picture of the girl, put it on the board. Okay, right there, the picture of the girl on the board. It's about the girl. Then I ask the students, point to a girl in the classroom. Then the students go ahead and point to a girl. And then I go and I say, stand up. I ask the girl that the students pointed to stand up. Then the teacher says, is her name Marie? Maybe her name is Julie, all right? But is her name Marie? Not her, the student name, but the name of the girl in the story. Is her name Marie or is her name... and then the students say, no, her name is Julie, okay? Let's just say the name of the student was Barbara. And then I say, is her name Marie? And the students say, no, her name is Julie. They come up with a different name for her. And then I say, no, her name is Elevator. And so they go like, ah, ha, 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 ha. Or they're going to go, oh. Or I usually, one of the things that a teacher told me a couple of days ago is she found that it was incredible in my classes is how I use my hands. Like, I use my hands in a way that, students can visualize what I'm trying to express, what I'm trying to say. So it's interesting. So you can see that they are actually understanding. I raise my hands up a little bit slightly, and then the students know that I'm asking them to go, ah. So I motivate them. If they don't start doing it by themselves, I actually just motivate them to do that. Just hint to them that they have to do it right now, just to motivate them in the beginning. But then after a few practice sets, they're ready to go and they start doing it all by themselves already. And then I look at Ella, that's the student's new name. And I said, Ella, are you a girl? And Ella responds, yes, I am. Or she just says yes. And then I said, Ella walks into the classroom. And so I ask Ella to walk out of the classroom. And then I say, Ella walks into the classroom. And then I say, does she walk quickly or slowly? This is not in the story. This fact is not in the story. I open it for the students to answer. Then they say quickly. And so, okay, so now we got it. We have a new sentence made up right here. We have Ella, not a boy anymore. See, not a boy. In my story, it was a boy, but the students said it was a girl. So it doesn't matter. It's just a gender difference. It was easy to handle so far. So I go ahead and I just recall. I do that recall process. I just say it back what they have gathered so far. They have a girl who walks into the classroom and she walks quickly into the classroom. So now it's time to put this information together. So how do I do this? I said, guys, Ella walks into the classroom. Oh, Ella walks quickly into the classroom. And the students go, oh, and then everybody gets it now. So then the teacher says, Ella, do you walk quickly into the classroom? And Ella says, yes. Because, you're just saying it to the students. You're asking Ella about her own life, about her own actions. So you keep doing that recall process, that calling back information and then repeating it in different ways and having that, again, enthusiastic spirit and talking with the students in an enthusiastic way. And then the teacher says, does Ella walk to the wastebasket or to the middle of the classroom? And then I don't point to the objects like wastebasket or the middle of the classroom. I just let the students see if they can understand. In this moment, I don't use my hands. I try to control myself and not point to the object. I just, it's like a father now. I want to say, like, are you ready for this? Like, I want to test you to see if you are ready if you are actually understanding right now what I am doing. So I'm just going to speak and see if you can comprehend. And so the students say to the wastebasket. If they don't, and then I will point to the two options, wastebasket, the middle of the classroom. But then now the students, in my story, I don't know if you remember, but in my story, go back here. In my story, the boy runs to the middle of the classroom. That was the original story. And there was a boy. And now the student said that there's a girl. And the girl walks quickly into the classroom. This is not in my story. Oh my God, what am I doing here? And then she runs to the middle. She doesn't run to the middle of the classroom anymore. The student said that she runs now to the wastebasket. It was, oh my God, okay. Don't freak out, all right? It's no big deal. Come on. And here is where the struggle comes in and teachers just freak out and they can't figure out what to do next. But it's just the simplest thing. Just have fun, guys. Just have fun with your students. It's okay. They say to the wastebasket. Okay, now, let's see what's gonna come out. Okay, it's fine. Let's see what's gonna come out right now. Let's see how far it goes and how enthusiastic the students are about the fact that she runs to the wastebasket. What are the students gonna say that she runs to the wastebasket? Okay, so then I say, okay, and then I just repeat the same process, asking Ella about that. I say, Ella, do you walk to the wastebasket? And then she says, yes, I walk to the wastebasket. And then I say, is there a book or a spider in the wastebasket? And the students say, there's a book. Or they could say, there's a spider. And so I could say, oh, so she picks up the spider and she scares another student, or she scares her brother. I could totally create something depending on the student's ability to comprehend what I'm going to say. And here you might find, Junior Brett, you're getting a little contradictory here because you said I should not include too many words. I'm not including too many words. Brother, friend, or these are words that everybody knows, are words that are they're so inbuilt in our culture. Everybody says brother. Everybody knows what friends are. It's like everybody knows these things. If they don't, and then just quickly elicit, quickly explain, and go back into the story. You could quickly translate it if it was even necessary. Just not to consume too much time explaining. You just quickly pop-up translation, what we call pop-up translation. Just pop it up, translate it, and the students, oh, okay, just like englobe it in the story. Just include it in the story. Just put it in, and now the students can now understand and use that word in the flow. So, there's no big deal. This story could go as far as saying, so, is there a book or a spider in the wastebasket? Students say, a spider. And I say, oh, so is the spider black or blue? And the students go, the spider is blue. So I say, guys, Ella walks to the wastebasket and she picks up the spider. And the students go, oh. And then I say, she picks up a blue spider. And the students, oh, right. And so I keep retelling. And Ella, do you pick up a blue spider? And Ella says, yes. And then, Ella, do you walk to the wastebasket and pick up a blue spider? I says, yes, that's what I do. So, and you keep that enthusiastic feeling of how it goes. So it's pretty interesting. It's really like a big way of teaching, because it brings that funny and bizarre and personalized again, because I'm asking the students, I'm helping them building up the story. So it's just a total different approach to teaching, because it gets that feeling that many theoreticals, many experts will point out to us as true education. That is, you provide the students with that freedom to build up their story and working group by making decisions and deciding on whether this or that. So, I mean, there's so many advantages in this approach. It just makes me want to cry. So yeah, moving on here. After, you've already made up the story's closed, You've already worked on the story. You know, you have acted it out with Ella, the girl. Now, what is it time for? It's time for asking many, many, many questions about the story. You know, you should ask at least, 150 questions or so about the story. But you start with very simple questions. For example, Ella is a girl, right? Sentence. We understand that, we know that as the concept that deals with it is called circling. Also, by Blaine Ray. He says that circling is that process of going. Ella is a girl. Is Ella a girl or a boy? Is Ella a boy? Is the name of the girl Ella or Ello? Is Ella the name of a dog? You keep asking questions about, just to certify. It seems like you're dumb a little bit if you think about it from your own perspective. But the thing is, you were empowering the students with very small bits of language that they're going to start mumbling, the very first utterances of the language that are extremely important for the students. And for you, it sounds like it's simple, but for the students, it's just a big deal. And they love when they're capable of answering a question, even if it's just a small answer, just a short answer, doesn't matter. They comprehend it and they could say it back. They could answer it. For real beginners, not just for those false beginners who are in the beginning of the course, but they should be a little bit ahead, or they know a little bit more than the others. It might be a little boring for them in the beginning, but then just until the questions are very simple, so you can build up the confidence of those students that are not quite ready yet. So here I have some other, and then after you ask those either or yes, no questions, it's time to start thinking about some direct questions. What are these direct questions? These questions are questions that are like WH. So, what is the name of the girl? Who is the girl? Who is Ella? Who, what? I'm just focusing on these two, right? On this sentence. Ella is a girl. So from this small part, this small sentence, Ella is a girl, I can ask 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 questions just from this little piece of the story. Okay. So is Ella a girl or a boy? Is Ella a boy? This is no. Ella's a girl. Is the name of the girl Ella or Ello? It's Ella. Is Ella the name of the dog? No. Ella's the name of the girl. You see, saying Ella's the name of the girl is like this. If the students are capable of saying that, it's like awesome. I remember being in my French class, and the power of storytelling became so clear to me. Not only storytelling, but total physical response itself. I was in my French class once, and then my teacher said, "Qu'est-ce qu'il y a dans la boîte?" He said, "What's in the box?" Right? What is there in the box? And he was just doing the normal TPR process of teaching words and shooting words and commands and me moving around. And there was a point in the lesson that I was a little distracted. And then I heard him saying that, and immediately I answered the question so quick, just so fluent. He asked the question, "Qu'est-ce qu'il y a dans la boîte?" And I said, je ne sais pas qu'est-ce qu'il y a dans la boîte." Dude, that was just so quick. I didn't even see it coming. I was like, did I say that? Did I just say that? I don't know how. I don't know how come I could say that sentence, but I could, because the teacher had already worked on lots of examples, and I had paid enough attention, and I had enough with the language to be able to say that without even realizing. So imagine you've done all the process, and then you say, "Is Ella the name of a dog?" And a student comes and say, "No, Ella's the name of the girl." And then, come on, you just won your day. You just saved the day here for the student. You just, made the person a prince, a princess, a king, because they're now capable of saying something that before they weren't. So that changes the whole scenario here. Then you can play some other games, dealing with these words, with these questions. You can play some games, and I I've got lots of games. From the most famous games that I use are Seed of Champions, the Pencil Grab, Line Up, Tic-Tac-Toe, Bloodsport, Double Your Money, and Back to Back. These are some of the games that I play. I'm not going to go into explaining because our time is short and I've already talked a whole lot and you might be tired a little bit of listening to me. But if I have those games in the coordination, so you can just go to coordination and get an article, a file that actually explains each one of those games. Or just look me up, junior@XOKENGLISH.com, and I can send you a copy of those, and you know how to play those games. And then what to do after the students have already learned the mini story, and they've learned their personalized story. And so they messed up with my whole story because it just came out completely different. So you can now ask the students to create a new version of the story. Get the vocabulary, put it on the board. Of course, in sentences, never, as I said before, concerning teaching vocabulary, never try to avoid writing individual words on the board, but focus on, writing out sentences, rather than individual words. And so ask them to form groups, pairs, and then create a mini story. They don't have to write anything. It's not time for writing. It's time for speaking. Use their imagination and say, Bruno Mars walks into the bakery, if they know what bakery is. It depends on the student's knowledge. So he walks into the shopping, as they're going to say. It's not going to say mall. They're going to say it. He walks into the shopping and he picks up my cell phone, and he throws the cell phone on the McDonald's clerk. I don't know, they can just build up their story and come up with different crazy, interesting, weird stuff. Students illustrate their story. They can just draw it. That would be awesome. And please save those drawings because they're going to be interesting for tests later. And then students can write the story. If they're visual, they're going to want to write the story on Edmodo, and the teacher can correct it. You can set it up for the whole class to write the story in their own words. Of course, you have to make sure that before having them write their story on the board on Edmodo, you have to have given them at least one mini story that's written so that they see the structure of how it goes, build the story, walks and these things, just so they can base themselves on something that's going to be used to help them out. Furthermore, you are going to use, you can act out the story. You can make up games for understanding the story. Recently, let me show you right here. Just recently, I created this flashcard on Quizlet that, what I do is I create it by, just create a set here, just so I kind of like show you how it goes. So you put the question on one side and the question on the other side, the answer on the other side, question on one side, answer on the other side. And then after you finish it, you should have something like this that the students can practice. Let me just show the term first. So who were friends? The dog and the cat were friends. So you have the question, and the students have the question and the answer. They can practice. For example, in the learn mode, they're going to have, for example, see term first. If they click here and see term first, who rents an apartment? Then they answer the question, and then if they get it wrong, they immediately get the right one for it, and then it's gonna show again the normal way of studying with Quizlet. So they have the question, they have to type in the answer. That's gonna help them a lot in terms of building up answers to the questions that you make in class. So it's awesome. So Quizlet, You can use Wondershare, Fling the Teacher, BAM games. Oh, BAM games are so awesome. And Jeopardy. BAM games are similar to Jeopardy. In Jeopardy, you have that board with all the numbers. It's kind of basically the same thing. And then there's Edmodo quiz. You can just create an Edmodo quiz or just create an Edmodo quiz for that story. Or you can create an Edmodo quiz for the story that you created. In the end of the class, you can show the students the story that you had planned on teaching them, right? So they see the contrast of what you had in mind and what they came up with, and see who is the craziest here. You know, if the students are the craziest or if the teacher is actually the craziest person in the class. So that would be very, very interesting. All right. Cool. Right here in this moment, when you decide on building the vocabulary and you start telling the story, actually right after you teach, you've already created the mini story with the students, the personalized story. Right after this, you can also teach your story, right? So that this means that you only used their personalized story to enable them to understand your mini story. Because after learning from that mini story that was personalized, it was made comprehensible for them. Now it's easier for them to understand your story. So it shouldn't be hard at all. Okay. So you could start there and then already start asking questions about your story. There's lots of different ways of doing storytelling. You could just focus on your story after this. And here is where I go what to do from now on, because I've given you the basis. And so there's so many different ways for teaching mini stories. You can create a story and teach the students. You can have them creating story in the groups and have them, acting out the stories and just give them that support. I mean, there's so many different ways. Okay. I'm not going to say everything. I'm not going to say anything else because I've basically said it all in terms of storytelling and using storytelling, at least for the first level. This is what I'm focusing on for at least the very first lessons, from lessons 1 to 20 of TPR, and then the way you make those personalized stories, because this is the moment that you make the personalized stories. There's no book stories, at least so far. We're thinking of giving the teachers NAS book stories. They're going to be they're going to be teacher support to help them with creativity when sometimes you're not creative enough, and then you just don't know what to do. You can't think of any funny stories, and then we're going to provide you with some funny stories, interesting stories that you're going to be able to use with your students. But most of all, I wanted to show you that you don't have to ask your students to write 5 lines of story, 6, 7, one story. The stories have to be simple, guys. Simple stories. Simple, as simple as possible. I mean, if there's a student who wants to do some more, have him doing whatever he knows and whatever he's capable of doing. But you have to get that idea, okay? I'm working with maybe mixed level students, so I have to adapt to students' capability or power or ability to build the stories. So that's it in a nutshell. I hope I have helped you comprehend the ups and downs, all the necessary information concerning storytelling. So thank you very much, and I'll see you around.